Hello. Welcome to the Learn English Lab. Today we're doing a deep dive into advanced English listening practice. And our topic is 50 plus powerful C2 English vocabulary words. Now our mission here, it isn't just about, memorizing a long list. It's really about unlocking a deeper understanding of these words, their subtle power, their precise uses, and ultimately how they can genuinely elevate your English communication to a whole new level.
That's a really important distinction to make right at the start, because reaching that C2 level, it's not just about sort of stacking up more words. Fundamentally, it's about grasping the intricate nuances, the real depth, and the exact application of vocabulary, especially within sophisticated real-world contexts. At this advanced stage, you're really expected to analyze, to evaluate, and articulate complex ideas with quite remarkable subtlety and fluency. And that's precisely where this kind of advanced vocabulary becomes, well, not just useful, but absolutely indispensable.
I completely agree. It's like this vocabulary set we're looking at, it's designed to be your toolkit, right? Not just for sounding smart, but for truly enriching how you express yourself. Think about those times you know exactly what you want to say, but the perfect word just isn't quite there, and your idea feels a bit undersold.
Definitely.
These words, they're your allies for those moments. They empower you to communicate with, unparalleled clarity and sophistication. Whether you're facing a high-stakes speaking test, maybe drafting a compelling essay, or navigating complex scholarly articles, it's really about bridging that gap between having a good idea and expressing it perfectly. So let's try and unpack this a bit. When we talk about a C2 word, what does that actually, mean? Is it just about how long the word is, or how formal it sounds, or is there something more profound, maybe more functional, that these words let you do as a communicator?
It's definitely far more about function than just, sheer complexity or length. C2 vocabulary is essentially the language of precision. It's the language of critical thinking and of high-level discourse. It empowers you to engage in conversations, in written exchanges, with incredible clarity and control. These words, they allow for a specificity of thought and expression that, frankly, simpler terms just can't replicate. They aren't merely synonyms. They're more like scalpels for your ideas. They let you cut through ambiguity and convey exactly what you mean, with all its inherent layers.
That brings us perfectly to a word that's incredibly vital for C2 English, both as a concept and, in practice. Nuance. It's defined as a subtle difference in meaning or expression. Like when a translator, for example, is praised for capturing every nuance of the original poem's meaning, they haven't just translated the literal words, have they?
No, not at all.
They've managed to convey the underlying feelings, the cultural specifics, those delicate shades of emotion, maybe even the author's hidden intent. It's like distinguishing between crimson and scarlet. Both are red, sure, but one evokes a slightly different feeling, a different shade of understanding, right?
That's a fantastic analogy, really spot on. Understanding and, maybe even more importantly, being able to express nuance. It allows for a much richer, more accurate portrayal of complex ideas. It helps prevent that kind of oversimplification that often strips complex concepts of their actual power. Think of it this way. Without being able to grasp nuance, you might miss the subtle warning in a piece of advice. Or you might misinterpret the slight hesitation in someone's voice that actually reveals their true feelings. When you can articulate a nuance, you're demonstrating a deeply sophisticated understanding, not just of the language, but of the subject matter itself. It means your thoughts aren't just understood, but they're truly felt and appreciated in their full, intricate complexity.
So it really is about precision in action. Okay, let's look at another word that exemplifies this. Negligible, meaning so small or unimportant as to be not worth considering. Take the example. The side effects of the medication were negligible for most patients. Now, if you just said small side effects, well, that's a bit vague, isn't it?
Black sponge.
Negligible is powerful because it signals an almost scientific dismissal. It's not merely small, it's practically inconsequential, barely registering, to the point where you can dismiss it from consideration entirely. It shifts the focus from how small to something more like, does it even matter?
You've really hit on a key point there. Negligible offers this kind of unparalleled precision, particularly in fields where exactness is absolutely paramount, like, say, scientific reporting or medical assessments. It conveys a very specific magnitude, an insignificance so profound that the element in question can be, safely disregarded. It lets you confidently state that something's impact is minimal, almost non-existent, and therefore it doesn't warrant further attention. It's a word that allows for real clarity and conciseness when you need to rule something out as a significant factor. You might also use it in, say, financial reporting. The increase in operating costs was negligible, which shows efficient budget management. Or even just in daily life. The difference in taste between these two brands is negligible. I can barely tell them apart.
Right. And then there's perfunctory, defined as done without real interest or effort. The example given is, his perfunctory apology lacks sincerity. Now, this isn't just a quick apology or even a bad apology. Perfunctory paints this picture of mechanical execution, like just going through the motions. It tells you something important about the quality of the action, or maybe more accurately, the lack of genuine engagement behind it. It suggests a duty performed out of obligation, perhaps, a superficial gesture rather than something heartfelt.
Precisely. Perfunctory is almost like a critique embedded within the description itself. It tells you the action was performed without the expected or maybe the necessary depth of thought or feeling or effort. Imagine a student giving a perfunctory presentation. They might just read directly from slides, avoid eye contact, rush through it all.
Yeah, showing zero investment.
Exactly. Demonstrating a complete lack of personal investment. You wouldn't just say they gave a quick presentation, would you? Perfunctory conveys a specific judgment on their engagement level. It's often used to highlight a lack of care or commitment. For instance, the building inspector conducted a perfunctory review, missing several critical structural flaws. Or maybe the perfunctory meeting yielded no real decisions. It conveys a sense of detachment that simpler words just can't capture.
You know, it makes me think about how many everyday miscommunications might happen simply because we lack that precise word, the word to convey a subtle difference or, like you said, a specific lack of effort. Okay, moving on. C2 words really allow us to articulate intricate ideas that simpler vocabulary, well, just can't fully convey. They give voice to concepts that require a more sophisticated grasp of the world.
A prime example of this is the word paradigm. It's defined as a model or example of something. It actually comes from the Greek paradigma, meaning pattern or example. We most often hear it, I think, in the phrase paradigm shift. For instance, the new teaching method represented a paradigm shift in education. Now, this isn't just a new way of teaching, it's a fundamental transformative change. It indicates a complete reorientation of how something is understood or approached, a foundational alteration. It's like a radical rethinking of the core framework.
So it's a shift in the very framework, yeah. The underlying structure, that's a huge distinction. It's not just an update, it's a fundamental rethink. It's about challenging the basic assumptions on which something operates.
Exactly. When you describe something as a paradigm shift, you're conveying that the very foundations have been altered, leading to a profound reordering of thought or practice. It implies a transformation so significant that previous assumptions or methods become, well, if not entirely obsolete, then at least fundamentally reevaluated within the new framework. This term allows for a much more incisive analysis of change than simply saying, oh, it was a big change. It helps articulate a truly revolutionary shift in perspective or methodology. For example, you could say, the internet represented a paradigm shift in how we access information. Or, quantum mechanics introduced a paradigm shift in physics.
Okay, now let's explore some words that describe maybe something burdensome, or, on the other hand, something grand. Starting with onerous. This means oppressively burdensome, involving a great deal of effort. An example is, the onerous task of reorganizing the database took months. This isn't just a difficult task, is it? It carries the weight of being oppressively so, suggesting a heavy burden that feels almost unbearable. It evokes a sense of immense, almost crushing effort.
Onerous really captures that sense of oppressive difficulty, yes. It implies not just that something is hard, but that it's burdensome in a way that feels taxing, draining on one's resources, whether that's time, energy, or just patience. It evokes a feeling of being weighed down by the sheer effort required, which is a far more vivid and precise description than just hard or difficult. It implies a prolonged struggle against a really formidable demand. For instance, the bureaucratic process of applying for the grant proved more onerous than anticipated. Or maybe she found the expectation to constantly be available for work increasingly onerous.
And then, sort of on the flip side of difficulty, we have words for grandeur. Take opulent, meaning luxurious or lavish. You hear, the opulent mansion displayed the family's immense wealth. This word doesn't just mean expensive or big. It paints this vivid picture of extreme wealth, extravagance, luxury, often implying an almost ostentatious display of riches. It's about abundance way beyond necessity.
Indeed. Opulent is not merely about cost. It's about a particular quality of luxury, one that is rich, lavish, and often sumptuously extravagant. It conveys a sense of profusion and grandeur where absolutely no expense has been spared. And every detail speaks of immense wealth and often a certain artistic splendor in its design and furnishings. It creates a powerful visual and sensory impression of, well, unbridled richness. Think of an opulent feast laid out for the king, or the hotel's opulent lobby, adorned with crystal chandeliers and marble floors. It definitely evokes luxurious abundance.
Building on that sense of visual richness, there's ornate, which means heavily decorated with complex patterns. Imagine the ornate cathedral featured detailed carvings and artwork. This word isn't just saying decorated, it's highlighting a very specific kind of decoration, intricate, detailed, and often highly elaborate. Reflecting a great deal of craftsmanship and attention to detail, it suggests a density of embellishment that transforms the ordinary into something visually captivating.
That's a critical distinction. Ornate suggests the density and complexity of decoration. Often with intricate scrollwork, patterns, or figures that create a really rich and detailed surface. It highlights the visual sophistication implied by such heavy embellishment, often elevating an object from merely functional to a piece of art in itself. It speaks to a deliberate and often painstaking effort to beautify and elaborate. For example, you might describe an ornate silver locket passed down through generations, or even the speaker's ornate prose filled with complex metaphors. It signals not just beauty, but also complexity and painstaking craftsmanship.
All right, let's shift our focus now. Let's explore how these C2 words provide practical power, specifically when describing people, their mindsets, and character. They allow us to delve into those subtle attributes and behaviors that define individuals or groups, offering us deeper psychological insight.
Absolutely. Think about myopic, which means short-sighted, lacking foresight or discernment. The example, the company's myopic focus on profits ignored long-term sustainability, perfectly illustrates its use. This goes far beyond just describing physical vision, obviously. Here, it critiques a narrow, ill-considered approach to strategy. It implies a failure to see the broader implications or future consequences of one's actions or decisions. It's a word that suggests a fundamental flaw in perspective, often leading to, well, detrimental outcomes.
That's really powerful, isn't it? It's not just they didn't think ahead, it's more like they couldn't or wouldn't see past their immediate goal. It speaks to a profound limitation in perspective. You might also say his myopic view of history prevented him from understanding the nuances of modern political movements, or a myopic investment strategy risks ignoring emerging market trends. It's really about a narrowness that blinds you to broader truths.
It truly emphasizes a lack of discernment.
Yeah.
A limited scope that actively prevents comprehensive understanding. Now, here's a classic pair where the nuance is absolutely critical. Obdurate versus obstinate.
Yeah.
On the surface, they both mean stubborn, right?
Right, stubborn.
But there's a subtle yet incredibly important distinction that a C2 speaker really needs to master. Obdurate means stubbornly refusing to change one's opinion, while obstinate means stubbornly refusing to change one's actions.
Okay, that's a fantastic distinction. Opinion versus action. So if someone is obdurate, their mind is completely made up, regardless of new information or pressure. Their internal belief or conviction is just unyielding. This describes an unshakable stance and belief, like the obdurate negotiator refused to compromise on any terms, holding firm to his original demands. You'll often hear obdurate used in political or legal contexts, right? Describing a fixed ideology or an unyielding position.
Exactly. Their core beliefs are simply unswayed. They won't budge on what they think. Now compare that to the obstinate child refused to eat his vegetables. Here, the stubbornness is manifested in behavior. In an action, or rather in inaction, the child simply won't do the thing. Even if they understand the logic, they won't comply. It's about a refusal to comply or alter one's conduct, even if they might secretly know it's illogical or necessary. Choosing the correct word conveys the specific nature of that stubbornness, whether it's rooted in a fixed belief, obdurate, or a determined refusal to act differently, obstinate. You could even say, the obstinate door refused to open no matter how hard I pulled, implying a stubborn resistance to physical action.
That's a really clear differentiation. And it's these kinds of subtle distinctions that truly elevate your English, I think. Okay, and then we have nonchalant, meaning casually calm and relaxed, not displaying anxiety. The example, he remained nonchalant despite the chaos surrounding the emergency, really highlights the power of this description. It's not just calm. It's a calm that seems almost effortless, sort of detached, unperturbed by external pressure. It can even sometimes suggest a lack of concern that might be, viewed negatively by others.
Nonchalant beautifully captures a specific kind of composure, yes. One that often borders on indifference or almost disarming casualness, especially in the face of significant events. It's powerful because it suggests an inner state of tranquility, or perhaps a deliberate outward presentation of ease, regardless of the turbulent circumstances. Describing such a demeanor precisely conveys a great deal about a person's character or their response to stress. For instance, she approached the challenging interview with a nonchalant confidence that impressed the panel. Or, in the more negative light, his nonchalant attitude towards the safety regulations was a cause for concern.
Right. And for describing someone's financial habits, there's parsimonious. Extremely unwilling to spend money or use resources. The example. The parsimonious millionaire lived like a pauper. This goes way beyond just being cheap, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
It paints a picture of someone who is meticulously, almost rigidly frugal, even when they possess abundant wealth. It's a deliberate, often excessive withholding of resources, implying a stinginess that can be surprising or even off-putting given their means.
It's far more specific than simply cheap or frugal. Parsimonious implies a deep-seated reluctance to part with resources, often to an extent that seems unreasonable given the circumstances. It describes a quality of character, a deliberate, even stingy approach to expenditure, which is a powerful way to convey a particular mindset about wealth and its use. It evokes a sense of someone hoarding rather than simply saving. For example, the university's parsimonious budget allocation for the arts department frustrated the faculty. Or, despite her success, she maintained a parsimonious lifestyle, never buying anything she didn't absolutely need.
And finally, in this subsection, we have pedantic, defined as excessively concerned with rules or details. His pedantic correction of grammar annoyed his colleagues. This word isn't just saying someone is a stickler for rules, it implies an annoying, often irritating behavior, a preoccupation with minor details or academic formalities to the point where it becomes tiresome or disruptive. It suggests to focus on trivialities over substance.
Pedantic precisely illustrates a behavior driven by an overemphasis on minor points or formal rules. Often at the expense of broader understanding or practical application, it captures that specific, often irritating tendency to correct or nitpick in a way that feels self-important or shows a lack of social awareness. It's a word that allows you to subtly critique someone's approach to knowledge or communication. For example, his lecture was so pedantic, focusing on obscure footnotes rather than the main arguments, that half the audience fell asleep. Or, she found his pedantic insistence on using archaic terms unnecessarily pompous. It's a useful word for subtly expressing disapproval of someone's, well, overzealous attention to minor details.
Okay, let's pivot now. Let's talk about words that help us articulate the dynamics of things, their beginnings, their endurance, or maybe their end. These words describe states of being, existence, and change with incredible precision. They help us understand the life cycle of ideas, technologies, even social issues.
Indeed. Consider nascent, meaning just coming into existence and beginning to display signs of future potential. The sentence, "The nascent technology showed promise for revolutionizing communication," perfectly exemplifies this. It's not just new, it implies an emergent quality, something in its very early stages, but already holding the seeds of significant development. It suggests growth and undeveloped promise, often signaling a moment of great excitement or anticipation.
It captures that exciting moment right before something fully blooms, doesn't it? That sense of emerging potential, like a little sapling that promises a mighty oak. You might say, the nascent political movement struggled for recognition in its early days. Or, the nascent talent of the young artist was already evident in her sketches. It really highlights the idea of a promising beginning.
Exactly. It allows you to highlight that crucial early phase where something is still maybe fragile but contains significant future implications. It speaks to a beginning that is rich with possibility, which is a powerful concept to convey, especially when discussing innovations or social trends or individual talents.
And sort of on the opposite end of the spectrum from stability, we have mutable, meaning liable to change, the example. Human opinions are mutable and can shift over time. This word describes an inherent quality of changeability, a natural tendency to adapt or fluctuate rather than a forced alteration. It suggests an inherent flexibility, doesn't it?
It does. Mutable describes an intrinsic characteristic of something. It's very predisposition to alteration. It conveys that something is inherently unfixed, capable of transformation, and not rigid in its form or state. This is especially useful when discussing abstract concepts like opinions, beliefs, or even cultural norms. It highlights their fluidity rather than their static nature. For instance, the mutable nature of language means new words are constantly being added, or our understanding of the universe is mutable, evolving with new scientific discoveries. It's a great word for describing dynamic systems.
So if nascent is about new beginnings, then perennial seems to be about lasting a long time or recurring again and again. World hunger remains a perennial issue. This word emphasizes the enduring nature of a problem, suggesting it persists through time, reappearing constantly, often despite efforts to resolve it. It hints at deep-rooted, persistent challenges.
That's a perfect contrast. Perennial signifies a long-standing, enduring presence or a continuous recurrence. It's not a fleeting problem, but one that, like a perennial plant, just comes back year after year. This word offers a powerful way to describe ongoing challenges or truths that have a kind of timeless quality, suggesting deep-rooted issues that resist easy solutions. You might refer to the perennial debate between nature and nurture, or a perennial favorite among classic literature enthusiasts. It denotes something that endures through time, often defying attempts to fully resolve or exhaust it.
And as things age, they can become obsolete, meaning out of date, no longer produced or used. The sentence. The old computer system became obsolete within a few years. This connects perfectly to the natural life cycle of ideas, technologies, or even practices, highlighting their eventual irrelevance. It implies a definitive end to their utility.
Obsolete doesn't just mean old. You're right. It means that something has been superseded, rendered unusable or unnecessary by newer developments. It implies a definitive end to its utility or relevance. This word allows you to describe the natural progression of advancement and how certain elements eventually fall out of use because they can no longer keep pace or serve their original purpose effectively. It's a precise way to mark the end of an era for a technology or concept. Rotary phones are now largely obsolete, or the practice of using typewriters became obsolete with the advent of word processors.
And sometimes things don't just become obsolete, they're utterly destroyed. That's where obliterate comes in. To destroy utterly, wipe out. The hurricane obliterated several coastal towns completely. This isn't just damage, it's total destruction, leaving nothing behind. It paints a stark, powerful image of complete annihilation.
Obliterate conveys a sense of complete and absolute annihilation. It truly does. It's not just damage, it's a wiping out, leaving no discernible trace behind. This word emphasizes the totality of the destruction, painting a stark and powerful image of something being utterly removed from existence. For example, the ancient city was obliterated by the volcanic eruption. Or on a more personal level, his hopes were obliterated by the news of the rejection. It implies a finality, a complete erasure, often with a sense of overwhelming force.
All right, let's turn our attention now to words that help us define more abstract ideas, maybe ethical considerations or levels of clarity. These terms allow for a sophisticated articulation of complex, often intangible concepts, bringing precision to the realm of thought and theory.
An excellent starting point here is nebulous, meaning hazy, vague, indistinct, or confused. The example, his plans for the future remain nebulous and undefined. This word is incredibly useful for describing a lack of clarity, not just in physical form, but in abstract concepts like plans, ideas, memories, or even arguments. It paints a picture of something that hasn't quite solidified or taken a clear shape, like a cloud without distinct edges.
It truly evokes that sense of a cloud, doesn't it? Something you can't quite grasp or see clearly. It's very apt for those moments when an idea just isn't fully formed yet, or maybe a concept is intentionally left vague. You might say, the terms of the agreement remained nebulous, leading to future disputes. Or, her memories of the incident were nebulous after so many years. It captures that frustrating lack of definition.
Exactly. Nebulous conveys a profound lack of definition or distinctness, suggesting something is so indistinct it's almost formless. When applied to abstract concepts, it highlights a state of confusion or imprecision, making it an indispensable word for critiquing or describing poorly conceived or articulated ideas.
Now, let's dive into a word that describes harm. Pernicious, defined as causing harm in a subtle or gradual way. The example is, the pernicious influence of social media on teens is worrying. This isn't overt, sudden harm, is it? It's a slow, insidious, creeping kind of damage that might not be immediately apparent, making it even more dangerous.
Pernicious is a truly powerful word because it signifies exactly that, a slow, insidious form of harm. One that may go unnoticed until its effects are deeply entrenched. It requires a deeper analytical understanding of a problem, as it implies a hidden or gradually unfolding destructive process. This word allows for a more nuanced critique of influences that might not be overtly aggressive, but are nonetheless profoundly damaging over time, highlighting a deeper, more complex layer of negative impact. For example, the pernicious effects of corporate greed on public trust were evident in the scandal. Or, smoking has a pernicious effect on every organ in the body, slowly but surely deteriorating health. It's really about a creeping danger.
And contrasting with that subtle harm, we have nefarious, which means extremely wicked or villainous. The detective uncovered the criminal's nefarious plot to rob the bank. This word describes overt, deliberate wickedness, suggesting a malicious intent that is clearly evil, a kind of calculated villainy.
Yes, nefarious speaks to a clear, conscious malevolence. Unlike pernicious, which implies a more subtle, often unseen and gradual harm, nefarious points to something overtly wicked, a plot or an action conceived with evil intent. It leaves no doubt about the villainous nature of the act or the individual behind it, making it a powerful descriptor for outright depravity. Think of a nefarious scheme to rig the elections, or the nefarious deeds of a supervillain in a comic book. It's about clear, intentional villainy.
Okay, shifting gears slightly to a concept that challenges our understanding. Paradox, meaning a seemingly contradictory statement that may reveal truth. For instance, it's a paradox that the more choices we have, the harder it becomes to decide. This isn't just a contradiction, it's a contradiction that, upon reflection, reveals a deeper, often surprising truth about human nature, or maybe a system. It invites deeper thought, like an intellectual puzzle.
Understanding and being able to articulate a paradox allows for much more complex, nuanced insights into reality. It really does. It moves beyond simple observation to highlight a truth that defies conventional logic or immediate understanding, yet somehow rings true upon closer examination. This word is crucial for engaging in sophisticated analytical discourse, as it acknowledges the inherent complexities and apparent contradictions within many real-world phenomena, fostering a more profound comprehension. For example, it's a common paradox of modern life that we feel more connected than ever, yet also more isolated. Or the paradox of success is that it often brings new challenges.
And finally, for expressing a lack or insufficiency, there's paucity, defined as scarcity, a small quantity of something. There was a paucity of evidence to support the claim. This offers a more formal and precise way to express a lack compared to simply saying there wasn't much. It conveys a definitive, often critical, shortage.
Paucity is a far more formal and impactful way to denote a scarcity or insufficiency, you're right. It implies not just a small amount, but a deficiency or a critical lack, often leading to a significant impediment or problem. When you state there is a paucity of evidence, you are making a clear and strong statement about the inadequacy of the supporting data, which is much more forceful than a general statement like not much. It adds a level of gravitas to your assessment. You could also say there was a paucity of original ideas in the student's essay, or despite the crowd, there was a noticeable paucity of enthusiasm for the speaker's message. It really underscores a deficit.
Wow, okay, we've explored a truly fascinating array of C2 vocabulary words, and we've seen why they're so vital for elevating your communication. But to me, the real question now is, how do you, our listener, truly make these words your own? How do you move beyond just recognizing them to actively integrating them to achieve genuine mastery?
That's the absolute crux of C2 Proficiency, isn't it? As we've kind of emphasized throughout this deep dive, knowledge is most valuable when it is not only understood, but actively applied. It's simply not enough to just memorize definitions or recognize these words when you happen to encounter them. To truly own them, you absolutely must practice using them in context. This means deliberately incorporating them into your writing, actively using them in conversations, and critically reflecting on how these words shape meaning and allow you to express yourself with greater precision and depth than maybe ever before.
So let's talk concrete strategies then, because this is where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. First, for writing practice. Consciously try to incorporate these words into your written assignments, whether it's for university essays, professional emails, or even just personal journal entries or reflections. Don't just stick with what's comfortable. Challenge yourself to use these C2 words to establish a specific tone, maybe convey a subtle critique, or craft truly sophisticated arguments. For instance, instead of just saying the problem was big, consider if onerous captures the burden better, or maybe pernicious captures the insidious nature of it. Try structuring sentences specifically to integrate these words naturally, perhaps using them as adjectives to modify complex nouns or as adverbs to refine verbs.
And extend that challenge powerfully to your speaking practice too. This is where many learners hesitate, I find, but it's absolutely essential. Make a conscious effort to use these words in your daily conversations, perhaps during academic discussions or when giving presentations. Start small. Maybe select just one or two new C2 words each week to integrate into your verbal communication. You might even try role-playing scenarios in your head, or perhaps with a language partner. Imagine yourself in a debate or giving a nuanced opinion using these words. Pay attention to intonation and natural pauses. The goal isn't to sound artificial or forced, but to integrate them seamlessly. The more you actually articulate them aloud, the more natural and fluid they will become in your spoken English. It strengthens those neural pathways for active retrieval.
And it's definitely a two-way street, isn't it? Beyond actively producing these words, you need to be actively consuming them. That means engaging in active reading and listening. Pay close attention to how these words are used in academic articles, high-level discussions, news analyses, official exams, things like that. When you encounter one of these C2 words, don't just gloss over it. Pause for a second. Reflect on its exact context. Consider why the author or speaker chose that particular word over a simpler alternative. What specific nuance or layer of meaning did it add? Why was paradigm shift used instead of just big change? Keeping a kind of C2 word journal where you note not just the definition, but the example sentence from the wild, as it were, and then maybe your own sentence too, that can be incredibly effective.
By observing them in their natural habitat, so to speak, you start to intuitively grasp their ideal application. You begin to understand not just what they mean, but when and how to deploy them for maximum impact. This kind of active engagement transforms passive knowledge into practical, adaptable skill. A crucial point here is also understanding when not to use a C2 word. Sometimes, a simpler word is just clearer, or a C2 word might sound pretentious if it's used in the wrong register or context. Mastery also includes knowing when to hold back.
So why is this active integration so absolutely critical for true C2 proficiency? Why go through all this effort? What's the ultimate payoff here?
Because the ultimate goal, it isn't just to accumulate a large vocabulary list. It's to communicate with profound precision, to think critically with exceptional clarity, and to engage in high-level conversations and discourse with absolute control and fluency. It's really about mastering the art of communication itself. These words provide an incredibly powerful toolkit that allows you to express yourself with unprecedented depth, sophistication, and fluency. They empower you to articulate complex thoughts and ideas with the exactness they deserve, ensuring your message is not just heard, but fully understood in all its richness.
And you're already well on your way just by listening and engaging with this. Every word you truly learn is another powerful step toward mastering not just English, but the art of communication itself. That ability to precisely convey what you mean, to understand the subtle distinctions in others' words, that's a skill that transcends language barriers and enhances pretty much every aspect of your life.
Remember, the journey to mastery really begins with understanding, but it truly grows through active, consistent use. Keep challenging yourself, stay curious, and embrace the richness these words bring to your expression.
So as you go about your day today, maybe consider this. What's one mundane aspect of your routine you could describe with a C2 word we've talked about? Or perhaps what nebulous plan could you make a bit more concrete using the sophisticated language we've explored?
And think about the subtle nuances in a conversation you have today. How might a C2 word better capture those finer points, allowing you to express yourself with even greater precision and depth?
If you found this deep dive valuable, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel.